Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Kamani, licensed clinical psychologist. Thank you for tuning in. I am so excited for our panel today. We have an international panel today, Black Women in Toxic Jobs from Pet to Threat, and we have representation from around the world just to show how Pet to Threat is relevant for so many Black women across the world, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my panelists introduce themselves. And then we're going to go right into the conversation. If you have any comments or questions, please put in the chat, and I will try as much as possible to be mindful of monitoring the chat. We plan to go for about an hour. So just, watch as much as you can. If you need to come back and watch the replay, please go to my YouTube channel, Lifting As We Climb Consulting, Bonus Services. If you have not already subscribed, please do so. I focus on supporting Black women leaving toxic jobs so you can have a more abundant and fulfilling life. So I will start with the co-authors, two of the co-authors of Pet to Threat, and then I'll have my additional panelists introduce themselves. So Dr. Johnson-Bailey, if you can introduce yourself, please.
Hello, everyone. I'm Juanita Johnson-Bailey. I'm an endowed chair of women's studies at the University of Georgia.
Thank you. Dr. Thomas.
Hi, I'm Kecia Thomas. I'm an industrial and organizational psychologist, and I'm Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences at UAB in the U.S.
Thank you. Adele.
Hi, I'm a career and confidence coach, podcast host, and speaker from the UK.
Thank you. Lissa.
Hi, I'm Lissa Appiah. I'm the founder of WeApply Canada. We provide career and leadership development services for individuals and organizations.
Thank you. Busi.
Hi, I'm Busi from South Africa. I'm a Black woman in leadership coach and founder of Black Women in the Workplace, an organization aimed at helping Black women navigate race and gender bias in the workplace, advance into leadership positions, and to be effective in those positions as well.
Thank you. Janelle.
Hello, everyone. I am Janelle Walcott-Small. I am an educator, a theologian, and an artist. I do have a background in teaching both in the private and public system in Barbados.
Awesome. Thank you. And last but not least, Alinke. Did I pronounce your name correctly?
It's Olanike.
Olanike. Okay.
Olanike. Yes, my name is Olanike A. Mensah. I am a talent and equity strategist, founder of Mosaic Consulting, where we help workplaces get clear on equity and leadership issues in their work, in their organization, in their environment, and embed equity principles in sustainable ways.
Awesome. And where are you calling in from? Where are you?
I am calling from Ghana today.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you. So you see, we have an international panel. Okay. So again, I want us to just really give honor to two of the creators of Pet to Threat, Dr. Johnson-Bailey and Dr. Thomas, because so many of us have had this experience, but we didn't have the word for it, right? So first, I want to start off with, if you two can define what is Pet to Threat and what was the motivation behind that research in the term?
Do you want to start, Juanita? You want me to?
Sure. I'll give the background, and the person who came up with the concept, Dr. Thomas, I'll turn it over to you. Well, we were participating in a women's seminar for administrators, for women administrators, learning how to go through the ropes and advance in academia. We were three Black women, two psychologists, and one adult educator, Dr. Thomas, Kecia Thomas, Dr. Rosemary Phelps, and myself were participating from the University of Georgia. We were representing the University of Georgia at the seminar. So one night, after debriefing about our experiences as mid-career professors and administrators, we started talking about how our experiences had shifted over the years. And I said, thinking of what Zora Neale Hurston had said about the pet Negro, that somehow or another, when I started my career, everyone loved me. I was like the pet, the new person. And as I progressed and went through the academic ranks and then became an administrator, these same people all of a sudden saw me as a threat. And Dr. Thomas was the one who sort of, had this brilliant idea that this is a continuum. We've gone from pet to threat. And as my esteemed colleague sort of thought about it, she came up with this concept. And so I will turn it over to you, Dr. Thomas.
All right, thank you. So, we had heard similar stories throughout that symposium, and we went to these long weekend training sessions over the course of a year. And we would hear, more junior women, especially women who were highly underrepresented in their disciplines, talk about, the excitement and what it did to have a woman or a person of color enter that department and, create, this kind of diversity benefit or social capital. But that they were not always feeling as though they were fully utilizing their knowledge, skills, and abilities. So in the same way they were kind of like overrepresented, they were being underutilized. I remember actually one white woman who was in a physics department at a high profile research university saying that her male colleagues literally pet her on the back and would say things like, "Oh, you remind me of my daughter. We'll do X," and X may have been a really challenging, responsibility, but it denied her the opportunity to grow and to stretch in her careers. So at this pet stage, I think many women start to think about opting out, right? Either opting out of that institution, opting out of that industry. And certainly, for the subsequent research that we did, that often seemed to be one strategy that people might pursue when treated as though they're a pet. Now, more senior women who have kind of decided they're going to stay the course and jump hurdles, they often say, excuse me, that they don't receive the same rewards and recognitions as their peers. Especially when it comes to compensation, developmental opportunities, promotions. And in addition to those inequities, there is often an erosion of support systems, friendships, family relationships, marriages. On LinkedIn, when people have posted the various articles, I've seen a lot of Black women in particular talk about the erosion of relationships with mentors. People who, were willing to be in that relationship in which you were subordinate, but once you become an equal, the relationship is not as satisfying.
Right. So when the power dynamic is off, right? Yes. Okay.
Right. And so the threat there is really a threat to the status quo of, what leadership looks like, how it shows up, how it communicates, how it moves a department or an organization in a new way or responds differently. There was one woman in our first round of data collection who had ascended to a position of leadership in her professional association. And as part of her kind of portfolio, she decided to take on sexism within this very male-dominated profession. And her colleagues, other leaders in this association really pushed back and said, we're scientists. Why are you trying to bring sexism into this? And she was the first female president. So I think, again, women of color and Black women in particular face this uniquely because we are often highly underrepresented in professional spaces. But I think it is in some ways a more general experience confronted by other marginalized groups who are outnumbered and, just kind of pioneers on their own in those spaces.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Johnson-Bailey and Dr. Thomas. It's interesting as you were talking about, the experience where people say, oh, you're bringing sexism into this. Sexism is already there, right? So that's part of the gaslighting I think that many of us experience in the workplace is that we have these experiences where we work so hard to get to where we got, right? So getting the degrees, getting the experience, getting the jobs. And then we get there, we have these experiences that many times we feel disillusioned because we worked so hard to get there. And then once we get there, and if we dare could speak out, right? So if we're doing this outstanding work, we get all this attention, and then it switches, and if we dare to speak out, then there's like this push out, right, that many of us experience. So I want to open it to the panel. So in terms of any of you want to share out in terms of your experiences of going from pet to threat, and just to share with the audience, the reason that I wanted to have this conversation is that I've heard of these encounters individually when I'm in therapy with Black women or when I'm coaching Black women, but I wanted you to hear this from Black women around the world, just to know that you're not alone, okay? So that's why I'm having this panel today. So anyone want to share about their experiences of going from pet to threat? You just unmute.
I can actually tell you about an experience that nearly broke me in the workplace.
Okay.
In my department, I was the associate head, and the head of the department was promoted to the dean's office. And so the assumption was that I would move into the department head's position. But several people, senior faculty in the department, said that there were people in the unit who were afraid of me. There was one man, 6'4", 280 pounds, whose office was across the hall from me, who said that he felt physically threatened because I was so direct. And so he asked to have his office moved. And so several members of the faculty, the majority of the faculty, said that they would vote for me to move into that position. But there were others who said they just didn't know if I could be trusted to treat everyone fairly, since I had experienced so many negative experiences at the hands of senior faculty. I seem to have gotten over them, but what will she do when she has power? And so
that's crazy.
And I was floored by that. But luckily, at that same time, another unit was asking me to come and be the director of women's studies. And so I took that job instead. Even though they asked me several times to come back and be the chair, I flourished in the other job. But it is amazing to me that people can see you not only as an academic threat, but as a physical threatening presence, because they have this idea of Black women as being angry and capable of whatever.
Right. So they're projecting their fears onto you, and it impacts you in the workplace, right? And it's so profound that you said it nearly broke you. Because when I talk about, and this is the reason I've been talking about this issue for so long, is that this is a form of trauma many times, and it can seriously impact us physically, psychologically, spiritually. So I'm so glad you said that, because many times when we're in these experiences, we're like, oh, I got this. Oh, I'm gonna fight them. Oh, they're not gonna do this, or I'm right. But it's taking a toll on us. And many times we don't recognize it until it's way down the line and we're really significantly harmed. So thank you for sharing that. Others, what have your experiences been like in terms of pet to threat?
So my experience, my name is Busi in South Africa again. I think my experience was in two folds, and which are important, because in one organization there were no white people, it was other people of color, and in another it was white people, and which then explains this challenge, these intersecting forms of oppression for Black women, you know, at not just at the intersection of race and gender, but anti-Blackness as well. So I think in the other organization where it was just people of color, and I came from the so in South Africa, you know, there are also demographic issues based on where you're working, in terms of who is the majority in those spaces. So in Joburg, it's a very Black professional space, and when you move to Cape Town, it's a very white and very other, you know, forms of color. And when I moved there, I just had an experience of just, yes, when I got in, I was celebrated, excited, this person from Joburg. And then as I started raising issues, because actually I was in a risk management position. Then I just got the worst experience of my life. I was in a new city, frozen out. I mean, apparently I was frozen out of meetings, and people would say, I heard from someone else that it was said that she, all her emails just say noted, just say noted.
Wow.
You don't have to
So
respond.
sabotaging you.
Just say noted, and there were certain meetings that I would not be invited also, just frozen out. And I was younger then, and I didn't have the emotional capacity and support and even understanding of what was happening then. I remember just resigning on 24-hour notice and just leaving. And my second experience was in a white organization, in a predominantly white private organization, where I was in an educational institution, and I was to lead a program there. And yes, when I came in, very excited, but even then there were few microaggressions that were coming in. For an example, when I would be introduced, like my qualifications would be, they would say a lot about my qualifications. So they would lead with, "This is Busi, she's an MBA." And what I felt was that it was a way of explaining to others why I was there.
Yes.
Because it was, she doesn't belong here. So we need to just, pump
out there
her
first.
up
Yeah.
to show that she's worthy of being in this position. And yes, I was like, press releases, excitement, she's here. And then later, as I continuously being, speaking to issues, made a significant amount of difference in that place, especially because South Africa is a very, as you know, it's Africa. It's more Black than it is 80% Black. So you start finding that students now find someone who looks like them, and they feel represented and excited. So I made a lot of difference in that institution. But when I started speaking out on certain things that were happening, I started being targeted. I mean, there was, before I left, there was an issue of I was going to be disciplined because I responded to an email to everybody. And I realized that I'm at a point where I'm starting to be targeted and persecuted. And for me, the decision was, I could use this energy to fight, or I could use this energy to go and build my own thing. And that's when I left. And sorry, as the last point, I've also identified in many institutions in South Africa where there's an excitement about the appointment of Black women, which makes it look like things are changing in terms of the representation of Black women in leadership positions. But when you go to the actual stats, actually the change is just 1%. And also the start is the excitement, the press conferences, and towards the end, you can start see the targeting, the microaggression, the almost annihilation of that person's credibility and talent. The latest one I just posted about.
Yeah, thank you, Boosie. I came up with a term, I call it psychological lynching, right? So I feel like I experienced that. It sounds like that's what you experienced too. It's like when you rise to a certain level, and if you dare, again, just speak out, then you are demeaned, you are demoralized, all these different things to try to put you in your place and to get in your head. So you start thinking, did I do something wrong? What did I do? What did I do? And start questioning your own worth. And, am I doing a good job? And they do it in such a way that they make an example out of you. So other people can see you and they're like, oh, I don't want to do what Boosie did. Look what happened to her. I've had people say that to me too. So recognizing that there is a cost that happens when we do speak out, because now we're stepping out of the role that we're seen to be in, right? So that attempt to put us in our place. So thank you for sharing that. Others, have you had similar experiences?
I've definitely had similar experiences, but also slightly different. And when I say different, I didn't become a threat in my role until I started asking for what I deserved. I started asking for equal pay. So in one instance, so I've worked in 2 different fields, human resources and recruitment, and also education. When I was in early childhood education, and I was managing, I was leading, I had teams, I was running the business, I was making the money, I was building the reputation, I had managers and people in our head office. They would bring investors to my school to show and say, like, she's doing a great job. Look how amazing it is. Parents are happy, children are educated and learning, and everything was great. They even started to get me to train other managers within the organization. So I was training other managers. I felt like my salary was quite low for everything else. And I did research, I checked, and I was like, oh, I should be on more than I'm currently on. So I had asked for a little bit more. And when I say a little bit, I literally only asked for 5K more, and was told I don't necessarily have enough experience. I was younger then. They said that you're quite young, you don't have much experience, you don't have a higher level qualification, whereas other managers have higher qualifications. Bear in mind, I was training these other managers. And also I was the only Black woman at this senior level. I then found out the other women I was training, who were not women of color, were all white women, were on between 10 and 15,000 pounds more.
Wow.
I had spent 6 months training all these women who were earning between 10 and 15,000 more than me. Yet I was told it was asked for 5K more. What then happened was they started to pull back. I was training less people. So I went from being this amazing person, investors coming to my side, to being the person that was sort of ignored. I was just in the background. They would still have me do a lot of the things, but just not sort of sing about it.
Yes.
I went from, and my mum always says it's like being the prize pig. She's from a farming background, but that's what it is, the prize pig, being shown off, being amazing, to literally, you need to know your place. It's okay when you're supporting us and training us, but how dare you ask for what you deserve?
Yes. How dare you?
And that's what it was. It was the how. I started being treated differently because of the how dare you?
Yes.
How dare you get the same respect as us and the same pay?
Yes.
When you don't look like us. You're lucky to be here. It was almost like, oh, you're young, you're lucky to be here. When it was for me, I'm lucky to be here, you're lucky to have me train. And at first it very much affected me. I was like, oh, okay, maybe it's me. But slowly I started to realize I make the difference.
Yes.
You bring people to me, I bring in money. And that actually helped catapult me out of playing small.
Yes.
And I think that was one of the biggest triggers that triggered me into realizing that my gifts and talents should be owned by me, and I should be utilizing them. So that was my situation. It was more of the, when I asked for what I deserved, I stopped being the pet.
Yes. And I just had a visual. I hope this doesn't offend anybody, right? But when you said the pet pig or the prize pig, who got slaughtered, right? So it's like, oh, wow, okay, we're just going to feed off of this person, right? So how dare you speak up and speak out? And I think for you what's so powerful, and my hope is that many Black women hear this, and Boosie talked about this too, is recognizing that to a certain point, yes, we take a step back, we self-evaluate, was it me, would something happen? When we start evaluating the system is toxic, the system's trying to get in our head, the system is manipulating us, the system's trying to exploit us. When we recognize that and we know our worth, right? We know our worth, we know our talents, we know, wait a minute, why am I wasting all my energy fighting these people to do my job? I can do something else for myself and get the support, right? Why am I fighting these people? So my hope is that Black women, if you're watching this, if you're in a similar situation, pause, okay? Pause, really reflect on the situation, really reflect on, is it worth it? Is it worth continuing to fight these people, trying to prove your worth? Or can you take that creative energy somewhere else, right? So Dr. Johnson-Bailey talked about, she did that at another job. So you don't have to do your own business if you don't want to. You can go somewhere else, at another job. But don't try to waste your time trying to convince people of something, and particularly when they're using you, right? So you know what you were doing was dope, right? Because they wouldn't have you training other people, right? So in my situation too, you know, I was training other people. I was doing something that nobody else in the district had ever done, right? And then when it got like I got too big, right? Then it was like, she's getting too big, right? Wait. We gotta check her. So I was demoted, and I talk about that a lot in the videos that I do. I did an interview with Stephanie Perry and Glamazzini. So if you want to hear my story, you can watch those videos. I'm not gonna go into full detail about it. What about panel? You know, did you want to, I'm sorry. Yes.
I wanted to add on
Yes.
to that and thank everyone that has shared their stories so far, because it's a lot to have to relive those situations.
Yeah.
And in thinking about my experiences, my work experience is a little bit different, because I actually was mostly raised and worked as an adult in the United States. And by the time I moved to Ghana, which was very recently, I had already started my consulting practice. So I'm consulting and I'm just observing what's happening with my US-based clients that have offices around the world. And I'm starting to, kind of make inroads here on the continent as well. So there's something that came up as the stories were being shared. First of all, I want to thank Dr. Thomas and Dr. Johnson-Bailey for giving us the language to name this experience. You said it earlier, and it's huge, because once we realize, this is a thing and there's a name for it, then like something shifts and we're like, okay, you can find your community, you can find supports, you can Google resources now. So thank you for your work and your labor on that. Thank you. Okay, so in my experiences, when the shift from pet to threat happened for me was when my star was getting too high, too bright for my manager or the person that was ahead of me, right? My direct supervisor or manager. And in one incident, I knew it. I recognized when those little things started to happen that Lucy was speaking to, right? Like a meeting you should be at, but you weren't asked to be there. Like, that doesn't make sense. That don't sound right. And so there's some little signs to know, like something is off here. Or in one scenario, I was in a meeting where my direct manager took credit for something that I did.
Wow.
Right in my face.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, that's interesting. You've been like my staunch supporter this whole time. Where's this coming from? Big sign, right? And I was like, okay, something's going on.
Yeah.
In the other incident, I always knew that something was a little strained in the relationship, like it's a little fake. You're not really all love here. But I never had any direct evidence until in the middle of a performance evaluation where I got all the high marks you could get. She said to me that I needed to be more self-deprecating to make my direct reports feel better about themselves.
Oh, okay, because you're too good, so you need to take it down a notch. You make people uncomfortable.
Like, you're fantastic, but why don't you just be more quote verbatim. Be more self-deprecating. I don't know how I kept it together enough, to play professionalism until I got out of there. And I'm still stunned to this day that she had the audacity to say that to my face. Like,
for real,
how dare you say that? It was just like baffling, right? And then after the fact, then I heard stories from other people years after that I left that job. I had the people that she was accountable to and reporting to telling me things that she would say about me to tarnish my wins and my credibility. This is also one of the people in 2020, after mass global resistance movement for Black lives, a lot of us got phone calls from people that had done us wrong in the past. She called me to apologize for other stuff. Not that comment. She probably doesn't remember it, but she was one of the people that was like, yeah, I'm just so sorry that I was butchered your name. And I was like, okay, whatever.
Wow.
Like, okay, you got so, these were my experiences working, some of my experiences working in companies in the States, and that's from nonprofit organizations to big corporate companies. What I've been noticing here in observing the workplace dynamics here is there's a different layer, and power has been brought up a couple of times. And the power dynamics they're a little bit different here because there are ethnic differences and ethnic dominance factors that play out. There are also people from other parts of the world that have been here for generations. So across lines of race, it's not always European, but there are other racial groups that have been on the continent that have been elevated for all the reasons, colonialism and all that, capitalism, etc. Economic colonialism persists. So there's all of that. But now what I'm starting to see happen, especially because I'm in Ghana, and there are a lot of people moving back to Ghana because of the, Beyond the Return movement, and everybody wants to come in December here, and people are moving here. Is even Black people from the US are coming here, and they're falling into the expat privilege trap without even recognizing it. And it's like mind-boggling to watch all these dynamics play out, because what happens is, because you have that degree from America or whatever, that automatically advances you beyond the local somebody who's experiencing the pet to thread and the oppression and all the different dynamics here. So I could talk more about that, but that's a different element that I'm noticing more and more. That I've got a couple of extra soapboxes I'm building to start standing on for those topics. And I'm like,
I can't wait to hear more about that. Interesting, because I remember your LinkedIn post. That's why I reached out to you, right? In terms of, that sense that we're supposed to dim our light. And, just think about, for Black women, how hard it is for us to get any type of positive recognition or to have any positive sense of self. So when we have this positive sense of self, and somebody telling us to dim our light, it's like, what? Like, what are you talking about? And so I just want to say to any Black woman that if you're in a job situation and you get any message, if you get any sense that somebody's telling you to dim your light or they're not trying to support your growth, that is not the place for you. It's not. Okay. So just recognize that. And I really appreciate what you said in terms of paying attention to that inner voice, those vibes, that energy. As Black women, Black people, we pick up on energy. We pick up on vibes, right? So pay attention to that. And I'm going to get to you 1 second, Janelle. So you want to say something that I want to talk about after Janelle talks. I want to go into the performative DEI and ways that Black women are kind of put in the forefront about that. Okay, Janelle.
Hello again, everyone. Thanks for having me. It's really a privilege to be on the panel today, and it's remarkable that I get the opportunity to speak among such intelligent and well-experienced persons who are clearly driven by purpose. As I would have said at the beginning, my background is as an educator primarily, and as an educator in Barbados, where I was born and raised, I certainly have had my experiences and my exposures to heartbreak, let's say, within my profession, and recognizing that there are certain situations in which we wish and we hope that the ideal circumstance is that everyone would get along, kumbaya. But unfortunately, that's simply not the case. And the Caribbean especially is viewed as this melting pot of cultures. And in many ways it is, but I do feel that there's sometimes the misguided belief that because we are so diverse that we are automatically knowledgeable and accepting of one another's various cultures. And that simply is not the case. And I've observed, especially in educational institutions, the clash that sometimes emerges as a result of that lack of cultural awareness, particularly as it concerns a misunderstanding concerning religious norms, linguistic norms, gender norms, and what have you. And I can share with you that, especially as it comes to working along with other female educators or having female administrators, my experience of pet to threat has been repeatedly in situations whereby there are it's believed that there's only one seat available for or one opportunity for one Black female to be able to occupy that seat. And so unfortunately, the hostility and the competitiveness that comes from a fellow Black female in the belief that there's that limitation certainly exacerbates a very traumatizing situation, which could otherwise be a very, very healthy progression in your profession. The other point of view that I would like to share before I leave to go teach a class shortly is when it comes to persons who are not of my ethnic background or not of my cultural background, who may or may not be from my country, who are the ones who give me the opportunity to come in recognizing that I am qualified, recognize I am skillful. That tends to fall apart when it is understood that I'm not going to participate in the politics of the institution, when it is recognized that I am going to assert what I stand for, morally speaking, and what I believe to be good and true and right professionally. And oftentimes the opportunity is removed because, okay, she's not going to cover for us, or she's not going to make a decision. Right? So, and that is the reality. As I said before, I have experience both in the private and public system. That is ubiquitous across the education system, and it can be traumatizing. It is important to have a network of other professionals within your space to kind of help you navigate those highs and those lows. And I too am very appreciative that there are terms now that have been established, have the conversation, so that as younger persons who are entering their various professional fields can rest assured that they're not alone and that it is a shared human experience.
Yes. So I wanted to comment on a few things that you said. Number one, in terms of, this dynamic, and many of you talked about this too, the dynamic is not just white and Black, right? It's anybody engaging in white supremacist behaviors, and they might be other Black people, other Black women. And that can be extremely hurtful, that when another Black woman treats us in a way that's like competitive or trying to put you down, you can't trust the person. Because many times as Black women, when we come into spaces, we see another Black woman, we want to align with her, right? We're like, oh, she understands my experience. But many times, or sometimes, that is not the case. So when you talk about not only knowing that we're not alone, my hope is that we're building community. So any Black woman, if you are experiencing pets as a threat, number one, you can name now what your experience is. So you don't feel like, am I crazy? What's wrong with me? The other thing is that now that you have a term for it, that you're able to seek out and talk to other Black women about it, so that you start recognizing that you have options and you don't have to stay in these environments, okay? So I wanted to transition a little bit in terms of, we've talked in terms of, this pets a threat and just general work environments. And you talked about, particularly after the racial issues going on, particularly in 2020. Now, we all know the racial traumas have been going on forever, right? But all of a sudden, this racial reckoning, all this stuff, right? All of a sudden, I'm sure many of us got these phone calls, emails. Oh my God, can you come help me? Oh my God, can you be on our DEI committee? We need your expertise, right? So you come in, you do your magic, right? And then you notice that it's very much a performative kind of a thing, right? So can you speak in terms of what your experiences have been in that area as well, that performative DEI? As my Spelman sister, Dr. Monica Cox says, stop playing diversity, right? So with Dr. Cox, stop playing diversity. Have you seen that, experienced that in the organization that you work in? And how have you navigated through that?
I can go ahead. Still touching on the first question, I'll transition into the second one.
Yes.
I guess I'm from Canada, and the big challenge that we have in Canada when it comes to race is that the race data is not collected. So it's not information that is collected with respect to health issues or just societal issues generally. When they say women, they're not making a distinction to be Black women, it's just women generally. So that's one of the things that a lot of groups have been advocating for, to really understand, so that the data can speak to the various experiences that Black people in Canada have, because right now it's very anecdotal. And in the last census that came out recently, one of the things that came out was that Black Canadians are the most likely to be overqualified for their jobs. So these are people who often have post-secondary and more, very qualified people, sometimes who came from all over the world, and even who, from Canada, who are Black Canadians, but they tend to be the most underemployed based on the type of work that they're doing. So to tie that into what you're saying, a lot of the women that I work with are Black women who are working in this DEI space, and something that they keep sharing with me, because I help people with career transitions, and something that they keep sharing with me is basically that often DEI is tied to human resources, although it's not, it's different. It should be different, but it's in an organization, it's often tied together. And historically, what has happened is, like, a lot of white women came in the 80s, in the 90s, and there was a push to have them come into the workplace because of the various movements that happened. And they didn't necessarily have the education, but they were still given these opportunities because of potential. And what a lot of the Black women I'm working with now, who are coming in with these degrees, who are coming in with, all kinds of qualifications, they're having a lot of challenges dealing with these white women who feel like, because they've been here, even though they don't have the same qualifications, they feel like they own the space. So that is one of the biggest challenges that I'm seeing in working with women who are currently trying to advance the work in the DEI space. That really, their work is almost being dumbed down as it just being like, it's just another human resource issue. Let's just deal with it as another human resource issue. You don't have to make this a thing. So, so that's kind of what I'm seeing.
Yeah. So two things I was thinking about. Number one was, that sense of entitlement, even in these spaces. So even in the DEI spaces, a sense of entitlement. And how dare you, the person with the professional and the lived-in experience, tell me something different, which is absolutely ridiculous. The other thing is recognizing within our institutions or organizations, there are gatekeepers. And many times the gatekeepers do not look like us, right? Which is very challenging, that you're talking about issues of anti-racism, but you're experiencing anti-racism as you're doing your work, you're experiencing racism as you're doing the anti-racist work, which makes absolutely no sense. And I think that's why a lot of Black women are experiencing so much stress and disillusionment, and a lot of Black women are leaving DEI work because they're like, this is performative. It's not transformative, it's performative, okay? So others of you, have you had this experience, pet the threat, and more of this performative DEI world?
I have, for sure. Mine was very much get her into the organization, put her face on the website. Everyone like, oh yes, we have diversity. And in the background, when we're actually trying to bring on people who look like me, or women of color from different ethnic groups, there was always a reason why that was a no. Because it was almost like, well, you're already here, so you can speak to us. You're the voice.
You're already here, right? We got
one. You're the voice of the Black woman of color. Like, we'll present you. You'll be the face of diversity and inclusion, and that's all we need. Why do we now need other women of color, or even men? Why do we need other people? It's the token. It's the age-old story.
Tokenism.
It's the tokenism. We want to show the world, because of all the things that have gone on recently, that care about this. And also the companies I work for, obviously they profit from black dollars and things like this. So they're black pounds, so they profit from us. So they want it to be, we support you guys, and this is what we're doing to support you. But in the background, if I push back or I say we need to do more, I remember pushing back and saying I can't be the only representative. I do not represent all women or people of color.
Yes.
That was the moment I became a problem, because I wasn't anymore. So just the speaking back, when I hired someone who looked like me, who was also great at their job, amazing, and we were doing amazing, it became a problem, because now it's 2 women of color being noticed, providing this amazing service. People are talking about us. Other companies are mentioning us. That then became the threat, because now not just what, sometimes when there's one person who looks like us in a situation, it can be seen as, oh, luck, she's good, it's just luck. But when there's more people that look like us and we're all great, it's almost confirmation that
it challenges the stereotype.
And challenging the stereotype became an even bigger issue. So then I became a threat.
Yes. And if it's only one of us, it's like, oh, she's so special. She's so articulate. She's she's like a prize. Like, most people in that community are not like that, right? The other thing is something that I've noticed too, when I talk to Black women in my own experiences, that many times in these DEI spaces, we're told, let's take baby steps. We can't move people too fast. Let's change hearts and minds. Let's not make people uncomfortable, right? So all these different things, like let's have another book club. So all these very much performative types of things, I think that we're like, no, if you want me to be a part of this work, then I'm gonna be about it. Now, one last thing I want to say before I transition is many times we're brought in to do the anti-racist work, right? And then we're treated like the N-word, right? So we want you to go out and do this work, but we're going to treat you like the N-word, and you better stay in your place, right? So again, that dual experience. Boosie, were you going to say something?
Yes, I wanted to speak to, sorry, we're having an energy crisis in South Africa. I didn't plan enough. I wanted to speak to performative diversity, and maybe also go back to that point around expats, the African countries, really, that imperialism around people who come from either the US or who studied in the US. But I found that, it's fascinating that in South Africa, we just came out of a very racist dispensation, but we are trying to do DI without triggering white fragility, So we want to kind of speak around these issues so that we still center white people in the conversation so that they are not uncomfortable. So then we end up having a whole conversation about nothing, I remember going into a sensitivity training, and we ended up talking about the growth, the growth mentality versus this. I forgot the term, but it just sidestepped the issues altogether. And also, it's very important who runs those talks. So you find that the person who's running the talks is actually a person who's also the problem. And so to protect themselves, they avoid speaking into the issues. And I also don't even know that it even is better that Black people are driving these conversations, because then it goes into, are they safe? Once they have real conversations about race and gender. But I wanted to talk to the issue of where expats then, which probably would be an African issue, in that there is a lady who wrote the book Black Women in Leadership. Her name is Diane Chilangwa Fama, who researched British and South African women. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, I hear you.
But so she researched Black women and South African women, and she found that Black South African women, she spoke to this one woman who was a recruiter who said Black companies would say they don't want Black South African women who still keep their natural hair, who have a very a deep vernacular accent, because they'll remind them of their history. So you find that American women or children of people who went to exile, who then studied abroad or grew up in exile, are the ones then who would get these positions. So you find that actual South African women who went into Black universities would not get these positions. So you start finding that some of these research that has been done in America really applies in South Africa, just in a different context, in small differences, but actually they do apply.
Yeah, I mean, that relates to what I'm thinking about in terms of what's happening right now with critical race theory and all this other stuff in America, is that people don't want to talk about the root causes of why is it that we're even talking about DEI stuff, right? So if we're not talking about systemic racism, everything else is very performative. So what we're seeing and we're experiencing here is, let's just not talk about it. Like, you can't talk about it, we're going to ban it, right? But it's like, by not talking about it, it doesn't make it untrue. It just means you're not talking about it. So similar with you in terms of, when we talk about South Africa, that not looking at why is this even happening? Let's really address root causes. And guess what? You are going to be uncomfortable because you need to be, right? You need to feel uncomfortable. We're uncomfortable every day, right? Just trying to live our lives. So why can't you be uncomfortable? What's that about? Okay. So as we're winding down, ladies, oh, I'm sorry. You want to say something?
I would say like three things. I'll try to be succinct. The white supremacy of it all, the centering white comfort of it all is global. And the parent of white supremacy is colonialism. Like when you actually go back, right? And so when you come to the continent, that thing just slaps you in the face. And it is here, like all those same principles are here. We just have to apply them in a different context. So everything you were just saying right there was just like resonating for me. Being caught in the crosshairs of being Black and dealing with anti-Blackness in all these global contexts, and having to deal with that, lack of comfort. Right? That whoever, sometimes it's not actually a European, sometimes it's whoever the actor is that has embodied those colonial supremacist values and behaviors, right? Dealing with that resistance. That's why people are tapping out of DEI work that also have lived experience, because it's hard. Whether you're in an internal practitioner working inside of a workplace or a consultant. A quick story about that is back in 2020, I was talking to, I think it was maybe a tech company or a makeup company, one of the two, I can't remember now. And they wanted to do something, and they had some incidents and some things kind of bubbling up, and they were asking for workshops for their entire staff. And I asked the question, well, what about your people managers, your leaders, your executives? What are you doing for them? Specifically, the answer was, our PR firm is working on that. I was like, what? If that is your answer, you are way off base. Talk about performance, right? We finished the call. I'm always very direct and transparent with what I'm thinking, even on an inquiry call. Not surprising. I already decided it wasn't a fit. That didn't come back to me. But so many people are, I have another post recently where I talked about DEI as being consumed by capitalism. So many people are in this work now that are not rooted in our elders and what we learned from our elders who went through all these, liberation movements, and what they learned. And some of the patterns that we're seeing are just repeat patterns from the 60s and 70s and, 1900s. Like these are So, people have to be really careful about the consultants that they bring in and make sure that there are folks that are going to speak truth to power, regardless of what is happening. And we also have to start helping the power brokers, the power seat holders in these institutions, whatever race or ethnicity they are, about the difference between discomfort and harm, because that's the other thing that gets conflated. All of a sudden, they're like, wow, we want this to be a safe space, which means make me comfortable.
Right.
I always tell people, you have no idea what it takes for me as a Black woman to be safe here. So what do we mean when we're talking about safe space? Because usually safe for you in this context means harm from me.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So it's so important to be careful who you're bringing into these conversations and what their orientation is, because they end up doing more harm than good.
Yeah. And just to add that the more we play this performative diversity in terms of making you feel comfortable, it's causing me more harm, right? Yeah. So I'm not going to do that. And just thinking about when you were talking about, like, you're having this consultation call, and I want to say this to Black women, if you're in the DEI space or you're a consultant, you get a call, you have a consultation call, and you hear stuff like this, it's okay to tell them, no, I'm not the person for you, right? I was just thinking about James Baldwin. I'm not your Negro. I'm not going to play around with you. No, we're not doing that, okay? So as we're winding down, ladies, I want you to give words of wisdom to any Black woman who is watching this right now, and she feels like she's in a situation of pet to threat. What would you say to her?
I think what I would say, what has helped me was reading Black feminist theory, like reading from Black female writers. That brought back my sanity. Just going back to the Audre Lorde, going back to, I mean, when I read the Combahee River collection, I cried because, so go back and read from Black women. It doesn't matter where they are. You'd find that the experience is similar. The terms might be different. The context might switch things a bit, but please, but do that. Do yourself that favor, one. And then the second thing is, I think for me, is help. I mean, we are not facing, white supremacy and sexism and anti-Blackness first in the workplace. It's systematic. It's from where we come from. There's childhood trauma that just coming from that system. So a lot of healing work is needed, and also identifying where you are in that continuum of healing. Because there's a time of anger where you're just so angry and you have no capacity to engage. And so you need to acknowledge, you need to understand where you are. There's a place of victimhood where you're pure victim and you can't, so it's very important to understand where you are and be supported through that process. And then we've talked about community. I mean, it's spoken a lot in the other videos around community. Community is so important. Get support. Pay for support, get coaches, get mentors, and another issue that was pointed out is get a brand, create a brand that is bigger than your workplace so you can move. You're not a tree, and I know that we come from a culture of resilience, of and most of the people who talk about how they've been. Most of the people who used to talk about how they used to be successful in the workplace and talk about how resilient they are. It doesn't work. It will kill you.
Yes.
So that for me are the things.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'm just going to go as I see you on my screen. Okay, Adele.
So for me, I would say start questioning yourself. That's a big one for me. Whether I do it in journaling or I'm just speaking to myself, I often argue with myself. That's the best way I can say it. But ask yourself, what next? You got yourself here. You can get yourself out. I think we lose our power sometimes when we're in a negative situation, and we forget that we got ourselves here, whether we did the interview, all the stages, we showed how great we were being praised. However you ended up as the threat, you can remove yourself. So what is the plan? I often feel like you feel better when you have a plan. What's the exit plan? So what next? Question yourself. What am I doing to remove myself from this situation and get myself to a better situation? And how can I deal with where I am now whilst making my next move? And that's often what I say to anyone I work with. I say to myself, what next? Because I'm already in the struggle. So what next? So anyone listening to this, if you're in that situation and you're in a toxic environment, ask yourself, okay, so I'm already here. There's no point in dwelling on it. You're here. What next?
Yes, for movement. Yes. Olanike.
Yeah, great points so far. I was trying to grab my thoughts as people were talking. So recognizing when the shift is starting to happen, I think we've talked about that in different ways already. You're frozen out of meetings, credit is stolen, people are trying to silence you in different ways. You're being targeted, you're getting support and coaching that you know is flawed. Like, that don't sound right. You're basically telling me to harm myself. All the way to being targeted. I had a woman that was actually the manager who was creating all the harm, reported her to HR. They ended up in HR, and so she went to HR and laid all the story out, and HR was just like, why are we here? You reported on yourself. So it's just wild what's happening out there. So what I would add to like starting to pay attention to that is like, whether you can leave or not really depends on a lot of external factors. Financially, you may not be able to leave, and on and on. Mm-hmm. So I think you have to strategize, like, really mapping out the gatekeepers. We talked about gatekeepers earlier that are around you, and figuring out how to play the game, to exist while you're building community and finding support and reading Audre Lorde and fortifying yourself in all the ways that you can. If you have ERGs, that might be a way to do it. You might just have to do it with your sister friends outside of work. But really strategizing, figure out who those gatekeepers are and how can you continue to shine and work around the people that are trying to be barriers, and how can you like identify those bridges to move yourself, maybe stay in the workplace, but move yourself into a better scenario. And then the other thing that popped up for me was, if you're thinking that you can exit, when I was exiting my workplace, I sat down with a friend who was in the Black employee group with me, and he said, "Trust your track record." And I wrote that down, and I haven't forgotten it. Trust your track record. If you've gone from pet to threat, that means you have a track record of being excellent. That's you. You can do that anywhere else, whether you're working somewhere else or trying to build your own thing. So trust your track record. I'll pass that advice on.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Johnson-Bailey.
Hi, I was very fortunate in my career. My major professor, one of my co-major professors, was Pat Bell Scott, who's the editor of the book, All the Women Are White, All the Men Are Black, but Some of Us Are Brave, which was a foundational text in women's studies, especially in Black women's studies. Well, a month into my position at the University of Georgia, she invited me to lunch. This was under false pretenses. I showed up for lunch. We got in her car. She drove me to her massage therapist and introduced me to her. She said, self-care is important in this environment, Juanita, where it is predatory and people eat their young. Ideas victimize you. This is one of the things that you'll discover in academia. So my self-care is that I get a massage every 2 weeks. And I have for the last 20 years, and it has helped my sanity. So massage therapy may not be yours, but find a method of self-care, because unless you are physically capable, you can't survive in this wilderness that's called academia, or in the American workplace that doesn't respect and value Black women the way that it should.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson-Bailey. And I would say global workplace too, right? And I love it. Every 2 weeks massage, ladies, listen to that. I love it. I love it. That is great. That is great. Dr. Thomas.
Yeah, I think community is key. And again, trying to form authentic, trusting relationships in your workplace. But if that's not possible, certainly, have that sister circle outside of your workplace. And I've been fortunate that mine for most of my career was in my workplace with my collaborators, Dr. Johnson-Bailey and Dr. Phelps. And, they were mentors and role models. And so, Juanita talks about her massage every other week. Towards the latter half of my time at that institution, I was also going through a divorce. So over time, I was going weekly. Like before I left the institution, it was a weekly massage, a standing 4:00 Friday appointment that my staff knew about. And they would be like, hey, shouldn't you be leaving now?
I love it.
And if you have the capacity, someone to help you clean your house.
Yes.
I think, with time and hopefully resources, you learn how to take care of yourself.
Yes.
And to do what is necessary to make yourself comfortable rather than making everybody else comfortable with you being there, which again is so important for, kind of having that sense of community. That helps, I think, also serve as a form of validation.
Mm-hmm.
I think of Beverly Tatum's Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together at the cafeteria? That cafeteria table recreates itself over and over again. And it's not only for support, it's also a place where you can go and say, hey, this happened to me.
Yeah.
And then others can say, oh, yeah, this is how it occurs and this is how you disrupt it or eradicate it. So community is key.
Yes. And, I think that's so important in terms of community, in terms of reality testing, because when these things happen to us, we get in our head and we start questioning, we start planning it out, we're going to rabbit holes, all these different things. But when you're able to talk to some good sister friends and tell them what's happening, they're like, girl, that's them. Stop. You're tripping. Right. So it's good to be able to do that. So I know we're a little over time. I want to read the comments. And then as we close out, I want each of you to share about services that you have to offer and how people can contact you, okay? So just in terms of the chat, good morning, beautiful melanin goddesses. Wow, so glad I could catch this. This is amazing. Nice to catch it on lunch break. This is awesome. Love the conversation. A lot of people just happy they're there. The angry Black woman happens far too often. Sometimes this may cause you to doubt your abilities. Important to have a village you can trust in order to validate that it's not you, like I just talked about. Mildred Joyner, talk about her. I can relate to your story. I have a similar experience. Thank you for sharing your stories and giving our experiences power. Too often, the experiences of Black women in the workplace are dismissed and downplayed, even by our own friends and families. This has been helpful. I received even this call to action. I call it the presumption of equality, and it elicits a firestorm of backlash. It's like, how dare you be presumed to be more than a resource to be exploited? Adele Thompson, your situation sounds so familiar. I was the only Black woman in leadership role and was denied higher compensation for the level of work I was performing. Another form of toxicity is being given more work than others because you do everything so well. The game is played many ways. I can absolutely relate to that. Speak the truth, Dr. Kamani, leave and take your mega skills and talents somewhere else. This is a very important nuance. So thank you for dropping the knowledge on that pattern that happens to a lot of Black women in the nonprofit sector in terms of giving extra work. So wonderful to see and hear. Amazing panel, especially Dr. Thomas, a personal hero of mine. I recall applying for a lead position, and the person I had trained was hired to be the lead because she had supervisory experience at a restaurant. I remember saying it's time for me to go. Then my supervisor had the nerve to ask me to train someone else right before I transitioned into a new position for a new hire, but didn't ask the lead I had trained to train the new hire. Let's be clear, Black women are envied and secretly admired because of the power and the melanin we possess. Yes, I also experienced this. I'm patiently waiting to see if any of you have experienced a predominantly white institution basically weaponizing Black women against each other. Ooh, appointing or promoting one of us to advance their nasty agendas. Ooh, that might be for another one. Okay. I definitely received this. Do not dim your light. The clash between, because the lack of cultural awareness, Janelle Walcott Small. Um, this is great. Was having this conversation yesterday, specifically in the education space. It's powerful. Thank you. Thank you. Your spirit will make it crystal clear in regards to where you should and shouldn't be. A lot of thank you. You're already here. The statement spoke to me. It's mind blowing and heartbreaking to hear how similar our experiences are. Shaking my head. Um, she's so intelligent. She's so smart. They put her before. Creating a brand that is bigger than your workplace. Yes. A word. Let's see. It's a lot of comments. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Going to Korean bath spas often is a relief. Great discussion. Have to watch from the beginning. Interesting the quote about academia eating its young. As someone who was in the basic sciences, I can say yes, and yes to self-care. Thank you for sharing your experiences. So what I want to say also, okay, so as you guys are, and I need to add, I think Adele came back. Um, as you guys are sharing your experiences, I'm thinking about having a part 2 panel because we just scratched the surface today. And just in terms of just how it's just so pervasive, right? And I just want to give more space and I don't want people to feel rushed, okay? So I'm going to work on doing a part 2 panel and see who wants to be a part of the panel. If you are interested in being a part of the panel, I'll put my website, I'll say it as well, Lifting Us with Climb Consulting, Wellness Services. That's my YouTube channel. My website is liftinguswithclimbconsulting.com. So you can send me an email through my website, through the contact page, and let me know if you're interested in being a panelist. And then we can see what we come up with, okay? So let's close out. And if you could just briefly share about your services and how Black women or anyone can contact you, okay? So I see the chat is still popping, but we're gonna have to close it down. I'll keep note of these things and then we'll talk about it in the part 2. Okay, Adele.
First, I just want to say thank you to everyone here and thank you to you for holding space for such an important conversation. But yeah, you can find me at my website, atenrich.com. I'm always hanging out on Instagram at Coach Adele T and on LinkedIn, which is just my name, Adele Thompson. Yeah, I do one-to-one coaching and you can listen to my podcast, which is called 5 for 2 Careers.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Adele. Lucy.
Okay, so my company is Black Women in the Workplace. So Black Women in the Workplace everywhere, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Yeah, you'll find us there. And yeah, so I coach Black women specifically on these issues and to also help them advance into leadership positions and also to be able to stay, because this is a big problem in South Africa. And for me, it is more frustrating because we are the majority. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Okay. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it. I think I'm pronouncing your name wrong. I'm sorry.
So where you can find me, my name is Olanike. You can call me O.
Okay. Oh.
I'll let you call me O. I don't let everybody
Okay.
call me O.
Okay. Okay.
Some people will sit until you learn how to pronounce it. No.
Okay.
But you can find me, just Google my name on LinkedIn. That's where I'm most active in terms of social media. My website is my name tag, Mosaic 4, the number, like the digit 4, equity.com. So mosaic4equity.com will take you to my website. If you search for hashtag Mosaic for Equity on other platforms, you will find me that way as well. And in terms of services, I think you said to say what services we offer. I'm primarily focused on one-on-one coaching and advising right now, helping workplace leaders gain a clarity and confidence to sustainably embed equity principles and practices into the systems and structures and policies of workplaces. So we're really looking at assessments that are tackling policies and procedures about people decisions and looking for ways to make changes there that can actually be part of how the operation runs. And then through Mosaic Consulting, we offer consulting and strategic audits and action plans and workshops and all the other things as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Dr. Johnson-Bailey.
Well, I can be reached through my email, jjb@uga.edu. I do some consulting and workshops, and then I'll let Dr. Thomas talk about what she's created for us for Pet to Threat.
Awesome. Thank you. Dr. Thomas.
Sure. So you can find me at Kecia at pet2threat.com. We do not have a website yet, although we are working on it. I'm also on LinkedIn, Kecia M. Thomas, and Twitter, Dr. Miss Kecia.
Thank you. Okay, so as we're winding down, I hope that you got a lot of gems that we shared today. And I just want to say, I'm so full of gratitude for each of you, because I feel like now you are part of my sister community. And when we talk about community, I reach out to all of you through the internet, right? I didn't know any of you, right? So I just appreciate all of you. And my hope is that Black women, as you're watching this, that we are modeling what positive sisterhood looks like, okay? So we're modeling that. I also want to let you know that I have a free training for Black women, how to leave a toxic job. If you're interested in that, I will put that in the update of the YouTube description. So I'll put that there. I will put everyone's information in the YouTube description section as well. And then I have a Black women healing from toxic jobs coaching program. The next cohort is starting late March. The other two are winding down. So if you're interested in that, I will also put that in the YouTube description section. So if you have not already subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do so. Lifting Up to Climb Consulting Wellness Services. Thank you to my brilliant panel. I so appreciate all of you. And the other two panelists had to leave. They had time constraints, time issues, so they were not here. I will work on the part 2, and I will let you guys know when the part 2 is happening, okay? So share this video with other Black women and really listen, right? That you deserve better. You have options. Do not stay at toxic jobs that are killing you. It's not worth it. Okay, so we're going to wind down. Have a good day. Panel, if you could just stay on for a few minutes, and then everyone else have a good day. Bye-bye.